One local author is using his very, very big talent to help veterans and military families through the Fisher House.
Wes Choc joins us now to tell us how you can help too. Wes, it's really nice to have you on.
Well, thank you. I thank you for the invitation.
Definitely. And so you actually served in the armed forces.
Yes, I did. I was in the Marine Corps for 3 years during the Vietnam era. That gave me many experiences that I carried with me through the last several decades, and came to a point where I decided to write them down, and I wrote a book.
And so was that your inspiration, is to kind of take all of those experiences and put them into work?
Well, sort of. What I would do is I would tell stories, and people would tell me, he says, well, geez, nobody else did that. And so they say, you ought to write a book.
And you did.
And so I did, and I wrote a book, and it turned out to be a nice reading. It's a very fast read, and it's a story. It's not a Rambo, because I was a wimp. I was 140 pounds, 6'4" when I went in. I almost didn't make it, but I did, and I have some interesting stories, and I talk about them in the book.
Well, and that's you on the cover, isn't it?
Well, it is, and if you look at the guy on the right, that was when I was 140, and by the time I got to the picture on the left, I was up to 175, so that's what the kind of meat they put on you when you get in the military.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so what can we expect when we open this book?
Well, what you're going to find in there is that I may be issued rifles and hand grenades, but I never fired my weapon at anybody. My job was a little different. I took care of writing letters of condolence. I could type faster than anybody else. But I also delivered the mail. Sounds pretty easy. But because I delivered the mail, I was the only one who knew what everybody looked like. And so when we had casualties, sometimes I was needed for identification, which led into other things. So I had some just really kind of different experiences. They sent me to school to learn how to speak Vietnamese, and so I was an interpreter, carried a radio on my back, and I worked for my captain, and therefore I carried a shotgun instead of a rifle, which rusted overnight. And it was every time I did something, it was just not like anybody else's job.
And so what really is your motivation to write this? What are you hoping somebody takes away after they read your story?
That's as good a question as that is. It's one of the hardest ones to answer, is because I want to be able to share something that I did, an experience that maybe others did not. I also like to give my grandkids, hey, what did Grandpa do in the war kind of thing, And I say, well, I've written this, and then when I get too old to tell the stories, they can at least read about it. But there's also other people in the story, too, and I want to write them down so that they stay in print and other people can read them.
Well, I would say a big component of this is to sort of get a first-hand account of what it was to have a sort of different type of role in the armed forces, like you said. I mean, I think that we hear a lot of stories about people who died to save our country and people who didn't die, must have been injured, but someone who sort of was a witness to all of this. I've never heard of anyone telling the story that way.
Well, speaking of people who got hurt, one time I was in a mortar barrage at a nasty place called Khe Sanh, which is where the Tet Offensive was, and we had incoming, and I slept through it. I woke up after it was over. I woke up from the silence. I got up, and the 6 bunks next to me were empty. Everybody jumped into the trench. My tent was obliterated. I could see the full moon looking up. Every single person in the trench got a Purple Heart. 4 died, some very severely wounded. I slept through the whole thing unscathed.
Oh my gosh.
Nothing.
That is so crazy. And you're
crazy.
taking this and you're taking your books and you're kind of making it, kind of paying it forward. Because tell me a little bit about how you're going to be doing some work for the Fisher House.
Well, this is an interesting connection because we don't have an opportunity like this, and I'm not looking to make money on the book. I'm taking 100% of the royalties through the end of January that I get in, and 25 even after that, and giving them to the Fisher House. The Fisher House, as we know, is this new place that I've been watching. I volunteer down at the Veterans Hospital, and I go by there at least once a week, and I'm watching this building go up. And the Fisher House represents a place where families of veterans will be able to stay. I volunteer in the hospice unit and the severely wounded unit, and these folks, have relatives who can't come. They just can't afford to do so. So the Fisher House represents a way for them to do that. And I think that's what's sort of motivating is that it's one more thing I could contribute, because I don't want to make it sound like I'm patriotic and waving the flag here. It's something that's just done behind the scenes.
Humanitarian, sure.
It's behind the scenes, and it's something that I like to do.
And it definitely makes sense. We want to thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank
Well,
you so
thank
much
you.
for giving back to Fisher House, and thank you for coming here today.
Well, thank you so much.
That was amazing. Thank you again,
so much,
Wes.
sir.
Thank you.
Now, from now until January 31st, any royalties from the sale of Wes Choc's book will be donated to the Arizona Fisher House. If you would like to hear more about Wes and his stories, tune your radio to 104.1 KQTH this Sunday at noon. For more information, visit his website at weschoc.com.